Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. My name is Christian, and I'm here with my friend Kevin Seaman, and he's here with his friend Nicole Ladich, and she's here. She's a very special guest, and she's going to be talking about her near-death experience. And prior to the near-death experience, we're really interested in getting to what your life was like before the near-death experience. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what happened before then, leading up to the event?
Yes, I can. So I was a preschool teacher working 40 hours a week. I just got sick a lot, and I used to get, the flu, sinus infections, ear infections, all that kind of stuff. But I was always working 40 hours a week as a teacher where, you can get a lot of germs from and that kind of stuff. And I also worked in like caregiving facilities and stuff like that, being a caregiver for in nursing homes. Um, I just, I always got sick, and it got to the point where they wanted to do nose surgery on me to remove my androids. And I went in to get my androids removed. And after that surgery, it was a couple days after I was at my mom's house. She said I woke up and I even sounded, I sounded weird. And I left the house and I was supposed to go to work. I didn't show up to work. And what's weird is that I went to my ex-boyfriend's mom's house. I don't know why I went to my ex-boyfriend's mom's house, but I drove up to her house and she walked out and saw me in the car, and I was not okay in the car. And thank goodness I went there. I don't know
Mhm.
why I did, but I did.
And can I just ask for context,
Yeah.
how long before your near-death experience was this?
This is probably
Okay.
the day of. So
Mhm.
this is literally the day that it all started in beginning of February of 2015. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I was at my ex-boyfriend's mom's house. I parked out there. Thank goodness she was home because she was literally leaving and saw my car out there and was like, "Is that Nicole's car?" So she walked up to it, saw me in it, and I was like, completely passed out, looking like basically, yeah, I was dying. So they called the ambulance. They took me in, and they had absolutely no idea what was wrong with me. They said I probably had like an hour left to live, and they had a flight for
Mhm.
life because I grew up in a very, very small town in
Yeah.
Wisconsin, and they had a flight for life me to the main hospital that has like everything, which is in Milwaukee. So I was sent there in a helicopter. They took me in, and they had absolutely no idea what was wrong with me, and I basically was dying, so they had to put me in a medically induced coma.
How did you
So
feel? Did you feel really sick? Like, did you know what was going on?
I mean, before this happened, I felt sick for a while. Like, I felt sick for a few weeks. That's why I went to the doctor, and she was thinking my androids, need to be removed and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, but I'll get to that point of what happened. So, after I was sent to Milwaukee and they put me in the medically induced coma, they did a spinal tap on me. And when you get spinal tapped, it shows all the information you need in your body. And it showed that I had bacterial meningitis. And they literally saved my life from like being from an hour left to live to be putting in a coma for my heart to still beating. But while I was in that coma, um, I don't remember any, like, I don't remember being in there for 7 days. And I was in a coma for 7 days.
And I'll just say that for bacterial meningitis, that's what I know about it is it's something that will just start. Basically, it's in your brain, and it's like eating certain areas of your brain,
Mhm.
And
right?
yep, and it can be transferred through coughing, sneezing, um, all that kind of
Really?
stuff. And they think, after my surgery, I touched something or it was there in the surgery. Like, they don't know. They really don't know how I got it because nobody else around me got it.
Yeah,
And
most people don't come back
it
from
was,
that.
my immune system was just so low because, I've always been working around sick people. So I was, a higher risk to get it. And yeah, basically after that happened and they figured out I had bacterial meningitis, I was in a coma for 7 days because of it. I almost lost my leg because of it. A lot of people usually lose their leg or their fingers or their hands and stuff like that. It sucks to this day because like my feet get really cold and they get purple and like I'm very clumsy and stuff. But when I was
Is
in
that
the coma,
because it messes up that part of the brain that's supposed to
it
control the
infection in your brain, which it did in my hippocampus. And what happened is that it basically tore apart a part of my brain and let a bacterial infection in there, leaving scar tissue. So they had to treat me for that, which they did in the hospital for those 7 days and everything. Much longer too, I'll explain. But when I was in that coma, I didn't believe them that I was in a coma. I thought I was with my grandfather. And I was like in the most happiest place ever. Like I literally was with my grandpa and I was hanging out with him and we're doing like all these fun things. And time isn't a thing either when you're in a coma and basically either dying or not. You can't tell days or anything. And basically I just, my grandpa was just, showing me my life and how, precious that is, but I wanted to stay with him. And he was like, "You cannot stay with me." And I was like, "But grandpa, like, why can't I stay with you? Like, I haven't seen you in forever." And he's like, "No, Nicole, like, you need to go back home." And it led me to like this light and just like walking. And he told me to go home, but I'm like, "Grandpa, I want to be with you." And he said no. And he said, "Just keep going." So I left him. And when I left him, I went through this light and all these things and traveling and going up and waking up and being like shocked that I'm in the hospital. And I'm just like so confused. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I'm so confused. And they're like, "Nicole Marie Laddish, like, just so you know, like, you've been in a coma for 7 days." I'm like, "No, I wasn't." I was like, "I was not in a coma." I did not believe them. And they're like, "Yes, you have." I'm like, "No, I wasn't. I just got back from seeing my grandpa." I'm like, because it's so real. And it's like, it's literally just like how I'm talking to you. It's just real.
It was that
And
real.
yeah,
Yeah.
and literally it got to the point where they had to show the picture of me in a coma because I didn't believe them. And they're like, "This is you." And I looked at it, I'm like, "What?" And then my parents were like, "Grandpa's dead, honey. Like, he's been dead for a little bit. Like, he passed away from cancer." And I was just like so confused. And I'm like trying to like, think about like what is happening, what was going on, and all that stuff. And like, they're telling me that like I was in a coma, but I thought I was, with my grandpa and, somebody that was very special to me. But after time, like I had to accept it and I had to just be like, it is what it is. That's weird. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like, I, believe in praying and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like your ancestors are watching over you and stuff like that. But there's a reason why he sent me back. And here I am today. But yeah, after 7 days in a coma, it took a very long time for me to actually like come back and stuff. Like I said, it was hard for me to walk. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself and all that kind of stuff. And it led to a lot of brain damage, epilepsy, memory issues, and stuff like that. And I had to have a tube in my heart. It was in my arm connected to my heart. And
Hmm.
that was been after the hospital too. I had to do it when I was on home rest. Um, I had to inject myself twice daily to keep my heart beating because I could still pass away. Like, they literally look at me and they're like, I don't understand how she survived this. It was a 98% death rate when they found me. I had an hour left to live. I moved to Colorado because of the founders of the Epilepsy Foundation, and they have some of the best neurologists for epilepsy. And when I moved out here from Wisconsin, because in Wisconsin they wanted to do brain surgery on me, and it was a whole thing. But it's just like, I didn't want to do the brain surgery because it's like, I'm trying to live a normal life. I was trying to work 40 hours a week still. I was told that I was going to be okay after, even though it took months for me to recover because I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to go to the bathroom. I had to relearn a lot of things. And I was scared too because it's like, I couldn't really cope with the fact that, like, I was seeing my grandpa and I woke up and I was just like, but my dreams have gotten more vivid too when I fall asleep. And my dreams are like way more vivid now. But yeah, after in Wisconsin, just, trying to do my best after recovery and everything. I just try to live a normal life. And I try to work and, do everything that I could. I was told I was okay. In Wisconsin, they let me have my driver's license, which is weird. um,
Well, I
but
wanted to ask
yeah,
because you had told me this story before, and
yeah,
it affected me a lot. And one of the things that I attached onto when you told me was when you first woke up from the coma,
yeah.
your family was like, Grandpa's been dead,
Hmm.
and you were like, but I was just talking to him. What did they think after that? How did they talk to you after that?
Well, they just looked at me just like confused, and they kind of just like gave me this look, just like, "Oh, honey, like, no, like, Grandpa's been dead." And they were trying to be super sweet and everything about it, because of my situation too. And it's not like they want to like freak me out or anything or just be like,
Yeah.
no. They're just like very kind and sweet about it and just like, honey, like, no, like, Grandpa has
They,
been passed away.
they don't understand.
Yeah, so they were just super sweet and just trying to explain it to me, but like for the longest time I was just like, there's absolutely no way. Like, I was just with him.
Yeah.
And
But you're obviously pretty confused,
I was
right?
super confused because I'm like, why am I here? Why am I in this hospital bed? Like, you're telling me I was in a coma? Like, no.
If it
And
brings you any comfort,
yeah,
there's something called veridical evidence. I've told Kevin this before. And what that is that in thousands of these cases where people will communicate with someone from the other side, they discovered that they're not only talking to someone, but they're able to retrieve information that they couldn't have known if that event didn't actually take place. Some cases you can glean more information from, like in this instance, you were with your grandfather, unless he gave you some information. Somebody could say, "Oh, well, you knew that before you went into the NDE coma or whatever." But there are people who have the similar experiences, and then they'll be shown someone that they don't know has passed away, and they're like, "Oh, I was talking with this person who told me he was my grandfather, but I've never seen him before." And then the person will show them a picture and you're like, "That's the guy I was talking to." And
yeah,
they're like, "Yeah, that's who it was." But it gets really interesting when they actually bring up uh, sometimes instead of going to see a loved one, you'll see someone more who's like in our reality, like a doctor maybe having a conversation in a private room, and they'll come back and say, "Yeah, you said this in private to this nurse," and it freaks the doctors out because they have no idea how it's possible. So I definitely believe your experience was real and genuine. Just like you said, it's as real as you talking to us.
And the other interesting thing is, Kristen, you can correct me on this, but of all the NDEs that I've ever researched, and I've watched hundreds of firsthand recounts of NDEs, and almost all of them, like 95% or more, are deceased relatives that they're
Yeah,
speaking with
yeah,
over there. And I find that incredibly fascinating, because even the total non-believers that think
Yeah.
that consciousness is generated by the brain and it's blackness after death, which it isn't,
Yeah.
by the way. But even those people, how do you explain that part of it?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, some people would say it gets really interesting because there's actually Bruce Graydon, who looks into this stuff. He actually was on stage talking about a lot of the cases he's gone through.
Another feature common to NDEs that makes us question whether we survive is seeing things accurately from some visual perspective not in the body. This too defies common sense. How can you see if you're not in the body? And yet it happens. Al was a 55-year-old truck driver who went to the emergency room with irregular heartbeat. In the emergency room, during diagnostic testing, his heart condition deteriorated rapidly, and he was rushed to the operating room for what eventually became quadruple bypass surgery. In the middle of this operation, he felt himself rising up out of his body and floating weightless above it. He looked down and, to his surprise, saw himself there, lying on the table, with a sheet over his body. And he saw his surgeon down there, looking very perplexed. And as Al described it, his surgeon was flapping his arms as if he was trying to fly. Al didn't understand that. And frankly, I didn't either. I've been working as a doctor for more than 40 years in hospitals. I'd never seen a surgeon do that. I later talked to Al's doctor and asked him about this. And he acknowledged that, yes, he had done that. That where he had trained in his home country to be a surgeon, he had developed this habit. When he walks into the operating room, all scrubbed in, with sterile gloves on, and his residents and interns, his assistants, are starting the operation, he doesn't want to risk touching something not in the sterile field with his clean hands. So he puts them where he knows they won't touch anything sterile. And then he instructs his interns, here, cut over there, pull back over there. So what Al thought was trying to fly was just instructing his assistants on how to do the operation. Now, how did Al know this? How could he see this? This is not an isolated case. A recent survey of more than 100 near-death experiences in which people reported seeing things from an out-of-body perspective found that more than 90% were completely accurate in what they said. Another common feature that people report in NDEs is seeing deceased friends and family. Now, many of us would expect to see deceased loved ones when we die, so that's not so surprising. But sometimes more surprising things happen. For example, people sometimes see deceased loved ones that they thought were still alive. Eddie was a 9-year-old boy who was hospitalized in a coma from meningitis. And he was in a coma for about 36 hours before his fever finally broke. His family were gathered around him by the bedside all night long. And finally, about 3 a.m., he opened his eyes and excitedly told his parents that he had just been to heaven. And he'd seen his dead grandfather and Auntie Rosa and Uncle Lorenzo. And then he said, and I also saw my sister Teresa, who told me I had to come back. Now, Teresa was his older sister who was in college in Vermont, and as far as anyone knew, was perfectly healthy. Later that morning, when his parents went home, they immediately called the college, and they found that Teresa had, in fact, been killed in a car accident just after midnight. How did Eddie know about that? Jack was a 25-year-old electrical engineer who was hospitalized with pneumonia. One day, as his young nurse, Anita, was fluffing up his pillow, she mentioned to him that this weekend was going to be her 21st birthday, and she was going to be gone for a few days visiting her parents. Shortly after she left, Jack's condition went downhill, and he had trouble breathing. He eventually stopped breathing entirely. He then had a near-death experience in which he saw Nurse Anita. Surprised to see her there, he said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I've come to fluff your pillow up one more time. And I'd like you to go back and tell my parents that I love them and I'm sorry I wrecked the red sports car." When Jack recovered, he told the nurse about this experience. She started tearing up and left the room immediately. Later, Jack learned that Anita's parents had in fact surprised her with a red sports car for her birthday. And excited to try it out, she raced down the highway and crashed into a concrete barrier, dying instantly. Now, how could Jack know this? How could Eddie know this? How can these things happen? And finally, there are some people in near-death experiences who meet what appear to be deceased people who they don't know. Levi was a 35-year-old man who was born in Holland, who had a cardiac arrest. His heart stopped, and he had a near-death experience, saw his grandmother who had died, and then saw a man who he didn't recognize, but who looked at him very lovingly. He didn't know who this was, didn't know what to make of it, so he didn't talk to anybody about this. 10 years later, when his mother was on her deathbed, she confessed to him that her husband, who had raised Levi as his father, was not, in fact, his biological father. Levi's biological father was, in fact, a Jewish man who had been captured by the Nazis when they came into town, taken to a concentration camp, and never seen again. And then his mother showed Levi a photograph of his father, which he recognized immediately as the man from his near-death experience. So we have in near-death experiences heightened mental thoughts when your brain isn't functioning. We have accurate perceptions from outside the body. We have meeting with deceased loved ones who you didn't know had died. We have deceased meetings with loved ones who you didn't know, period. And we don't have a good physical explanation for this. So all these things should make us think about, is there something about us that survives the bodily death? And if so, what is that thing?
So there are many, many cases like that. So, and Dr. Eben Alexander had a case like yours. He had cerebral meningitis, and similar circumstance. He shouldn't have come back, and came back, and he was shown someone who had passed away, and he didn't realize was passed away. And he said he was just blown away by how real that experience was. And in his case, it seemed more real than this waking reality that we live. I don't know how it was for you. That was going to be one of my questions. How real? Was it real, similar, or more real?
I mean, it was more real, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not like I had the feeling of stress. It's not like I had the feeling, it was really different, but it was
The sense of time was different.
Yeah,
They say
different.
that.
There was no day, I couldn't tell the days or anything. It didn't feel like, there was days or times. I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel like I had to do something. All I had to do was just be with my grandpa. And I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just thinking about being there at that time, which was such a beautiful place. And I just wanted to be there with him. But he was explaining to me how I need to go home and it's just not my time yet. And it was just, it was the most realistic thing you can possibly imagine, because that's where you are in that state.
And you were 19, right, when this happened?
I was
and that is also kind of interesting, because a lot of people that had the NDEs, they have a discussion of whether they should go back or not. And in this case, it's funny that the grandpa said, you need to go back home. In a lot of NDEs, they've said, this is your home, but you still have to go back to the human world because you have some undone work.
Mm-hmm.
And the people were always like, I want to stay here in this place, the new place.
Yeah.
They never wanted to go, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I didn't want to leave either. I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
It was
But
so
I guess maybe because you're so young, as a 19-year-old, the words he used were like perfect, maybe for you.
Well, yeah, and also too, it's my grandpa, so I'm gonna listen to him.
I did have a question. You had mentioned that you were talking with your grandpa about your life. That almost sounds, or could be, what a lot of near-death experiences express is what's called the life review.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you went over details, because the life review is different for everyone, but what's typical of one is going back and actually seeing the events of your life from birth to death
Mhm.
or to the experience or accident, and you get to relive the experience through other people's eyes. It doesn't sound like it went that deep, but it could have for you. That's why I wanted to ask that. Did anything like that happen? Like, what was the detail like between you and him?
Well, the reason why I wanted to stay there and stuff like that, just because, I wasn't happy where I was. And I wanted to be with my grandpa, but he was letting me know because, like, it was kind of a thing where, you experience your life details and what happened in your past to where that happened now. But it was basically like I wasn't happy and I wasn't, I was depressed where I was. Like, I wanted to be with him where I'm happy and I feel free and I feel like I can just be with somebody that actually is going to be able to take care of me.
Right.
And it was just the fact that he was just showing me that basically, like, I know life is tough. I know you've gone through, struggles, and I know life can be hard and all that kind of stuff, but like, you can't be with me. Like, you have to go home. You have to go home to your family. But it's just like, I was just in my past too, and like what he was telling me was just basically like it can be rough, it can be hard, it can be tough, but you're strong and you can do this and you have a potential and you have something that you can give. So you need to go back.
Right.
But
Unfinished
he didn't
business.
tell you specifically what.
No, he just basically knew, and like I said, like I was like, I'm happy here, and he's just like, I understand that like your life has been rough. I understand, the depression and that kind of stuff because I was depressed, and it's like like living life too. It can be depressing, and it's a struggle. But it's when I was in that state, it was just so just like free and just like happy where it's like I was not in that stage at that time and I didn't have that emotions of happiness and freedom and being
Yeah.
able to not have struggles. And I wanted to stay there. And like he was just basically explaining, like, I know your past has been rough. I know you've gone through these struggles and it's hard to, like be able to do what you want to do, especially at the age of 19. Like, and I want to be a teacher and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, I was a happy kid growing up and stuff like that, but I had my problems and a lot of people do. And I've had my, depression, emotional issues. I had troubles with family. I've had troubles with friends, like, and it's not fun for somebody that's, very positive like me when it can be such a negative world. And I wanted to stay
Yeah.
at
That's
place.
how I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah. I wanted to stay in that place where it was happiness because that's who I am, you know? And it's like I'm very easy to like, people can make fun of me. They still make fun of me to this day for my memory problems, my epilepsy. I lost a lot of friends from it. But it's just like and my clumsiness, my feet's being weird, and stuff like that from almost losing my leg. Like, it's weird. My feet get really purple and they get really cold. And people are like, "Are your feet okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're fine." But it's just like when you're in that stage of like, this is the real world. It has its struggles, it has its different emotions, and what you haven't really felt for a very long time. It's like I just wanted to be there. And like that's why I was struggling for him to tell me to go back home because I was telling like I was like it's sorry to say but it sucks.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't happy. Like why? And basically, just saying like I know life is rough and
Yeah,
all that. But you need to go back and you have a potential and you have something that you need to accomplish still.
also in a lot of cases, what I find, and also in hypnotherapy cases where, and that's where it can kind of get weird because they start to get more details out of what it's like over there, pre-birth planning, like what we come here to do, but this is not the only place, nor this is not the final lesson either, because it goes on and on and on and on. And Earth is not the only place. But what they mention, what they really respect, like spirit guides and stuff that follow you throughout life. And sometimes a deceased relative can be a spirit guide, but not always.
Mhm.
Again, this is through hypnotherapy, but they really respect free will. So they're not going to tell you how to live your life.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll have suggestions or little things, but they won't say certain things that could infringe upon your choices, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, grandpa said for me to do this, so I have to do this. I'm not going to do it any other way, and that infringes upon your free will. So that is something that comes up a lot. Free will is like
Just,
highly
just
respected.
they kind of give you guidance or hints,
Yeah, they'll give you hints, but they
no
won't.
direction. But sometimes people end up getting confused in a
Be-
lot of cases.
because we need to fall, because we're also, it's not the only reason we're here, but to grow spiritually as a soul, you have to
Mhm.
go through certain lessons, because a lot of people hate the circumstances that they're in, but then years later when everything's just working out, they're like, wow, where would I be if that didn't happen to me, or like the experience I didn't have, so
No, Nicole felt that way because you were a young woman and you were 19, and people that age just want to fit in and have friends and do the normal thing. You probably didn't want this to happen, right?
Oh no. Like I honestly, like, when I woke up from my coma, like, I was happy. But like I said, it took a while for it to, like, come to me and be like, okay, so this is real life, all that kind of stuff. And like, I try to keep like a positive attitude for it, but like, still in my head, I'm just like, wow, like, this kind of sucks. And like, what is this going to lead to? Also, it's just like, I was scared for a little bit, but after having that experience with my grandpa, it was kind of like I got over that fear and was just like, okay, like, it is what it is. When it happens, it happens. But like, here I am, and I just have to keep moving forward. But when people went and came and saw me in the hospital or on home rest, they came in and they kind of had this, nervous look because they didn't know how to approach me. They didn't know how to talk to me. They didn't know how to, you know, like what I went through, just be like, it's okay and all that kind of stuff because, it really
yeah.
wasn't going to be okay. But people are trying to be positive, and I try to be positive still. But unfortunately, there's a lot of struggles too after for what happened.
Your dad and your mom were very, very scared while it was happening to you.
But you can kind of tell they hit it, and they didn't want to freak me out. So they were just like, you got this, you can do it, just live a normal life. Like, it is what it is. It's in the past. Here's the future. So but at 19, it's like, it's a lot to take in because you still haven't really experienced what adulthood is like and stuff like that, and experience what the real world was like. I wasn't, you know, like in a different county paying rent, like working like away from my parents and kind of stuff. Like that was until later on in my life because I had to, get better back in my hometown, and it took a while. It took a long time.
I wanted to ask about during the experience. A lot of people I know are going to be really interested in what it's like for a younger person, especially under 20, having gone through it. And so I just wanted to see if you could elaborate any more on what was the first thing that happened, the first thing that you remember when you were going into that coma originally, um, that lasted 2 weeks. But once you got into the NDE place, it was like a timeless place. So maybe it's hard to explain in terms of like what was the first thing,
Because of
but what
time.
was the
Yeah.
first? Yeah, how did it go? How did it progress? Did you see a light at the very first thing?
The first thing I did, yeah, was kind of just see it, not like a light, but just like a pathway. And the pathway too was just like me going through it and just like being like, you know, like brightness and stuff, but like also too, like my grandpa just being there at the end, just like, hi. Like, and I was just like, "What's up? Like, haven't seen you in a while." You know,
Was it a visual path? Was it like a path in nature,
it was
or
like
what did it
like
like?
a hallway. You know, it was kind of just like a hallway, and it
The
was just
tunnel.
with lights and just like you know walking through it and just being like, okay, just keep walking because it's like you know maybe I was at work or something. I don't know, maybe. But then I left and it was just like my grandpa, just like you know, like. Hey, 7 days I was in the coma, and it was just like I said, dude, time and days don't really matter in that state. It's not a thing
Yeah.
because it seems like
Timeless.
timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 7 days the coma lasted. You were completely out. You weren't talking to anybody for 7 days.
I had a tube in my mouth. You'll see a picture later. There's no way for me to talk or I had a tube in my mouth. I was completely out. I had things all over my brain, you know, stuff in my bladder and all that kind of stuff. So I can go to the bathroom still while I was in a coma. Um, it's, yeah.
So my question is, when do you think that NDE happened during that week time frame, or is it impossible to tell
Honestly, like
right away?
when I got into it, like I didn't, like I literally just thought I was living life. And then, like I said before, like when I was working and stuff like that, and just doing my thing to be like, oh, hey, like I'm going to go see my grandpa.
Yeah. I mean, the timeless thing is something that they all express, and what comes through in hypnotherapy is that what we perceive as time here on Earth, which is we perceive it linearly, that's not actually how it works. So on the other side, because it's timeless, it's everything is actually happening more slowly over there. So the time spent with your grandfather, I'm going to throw out a number here, I'm making it up, but it could have been like 2-3 weeks in that world or
Yeah.
5 years. And then over here, it was only 7 days. Because there are people who have these full blown near death experiences for like only 5 minutes, like literally the heart stops for 5 minutes. They bring them back and they're like, dude, I was over there. It felt like 10 years. So time really doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter when it started because it's just once the experience starts, it's a rendezvous for some reason, and
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to pinpoint when it started.
Would
But
you even say, does it even make sense to try to think when did it occur? When the brain was shutting down? Was it at this time, or was it when the brain was coming back online? Because I know that's how materialists think.
yeah,
They're trying to figure out when the brain produced the experience. And I don't think the brain actually produced the experience. I'm pretty sure it doesn't
well,
in this case.
well, you've also heard me bring up like skeptics will bring up the brain, but the funny thing is like I always bring up Eben Alexander, and I'm definitely going to bring up your case now too because
That's great.
he had cerebral meningitis. And Pam Reynolds was an interesting case because for her operation, she had a massive brain aneurysm at the stem of her brain. And at the time in the 90s, they didn't have a mainstream, well known procedure to get there without killing her. So they told her she was going to die. There was nothing we can do. But one doctor had a procedure that they wanted to do called standstill operation.
The operation Pam was about to undergo was known as Operation Standstill. Pam's body temperature would be lowered to between 10 and 15 degrees centigrade. Her heart and breathing stopped, her brain waves flattened, and the blood drained from her head. She would be clinically dead for a whole hour of the operation.
What we want to do is we want to bring that brain to a halt. We don't just want the brain to be asleep. We want the metabolic activity of the brain to stop. Every measurable output that the body puts out really disappears completely, so that you have no measurable neuronal activity whatsoever. Prior to the operation starting, a lot of activity goes on. The patient is put to sleep. The eyes are taped shut. There are little clicking devices put in each ear in order to monitor the brain. The patient is then completely covered. The only thing that's really exposed is the area of the head where we work.
Or hypothermic circulatory rest procedure. That's where they actually put you to sleep. They cut into your femoral artery. They drain you of blood. They give you a pill to stop the metabolic activity of the brain. So they stop your heartbeat. So you're flatlined for this operation. But they also chill your body down so that it slows like the process of like you having like brain damage when they finally bring you back. Her eyes were taped shut. Her ears, they put clickers in her ears. She shouldn't have had an experience at all, but she was able to recount the music they were playing in the operating room, what the doctors were saying. She told them it was insensitive, the type of music they were playing. And she described the tools they were using, which nobody had seen because they don't open up those tools prior to the surgery until the patient is under because of the bacteria. They don't want it to be exposed to the air. So they keep the case closed. So they were like, how could she tell us all of this detail when, for all intents and purposes, she was clinically dead? She was dead.
Did they prove that her brain didn't have any activity?
Yeah, they have her hooked up to everything. They're monitoring everything. So the clickers are also there so that they send loud decibel noises. So if there's any brain activity on the screen, they have like a machine that will like show them, hey, she's receiving stimulus, like something's happening. The brain's reacting to the stimulus that we're sending through noises into her ears. So it's like it was nothing. There was nothing, no heartbeat, no nothing.
That's similar to how Eben Alexander explained it, because he was convinced, and he said it's evident in the actual write-ups of his case.
Oh yeah, the case study. I have the case report too.
He's actually a doctor, for everybody that doesn't know, but he was being worked on by doctors because he had bacterial meningitis, same as Nicole. And he went into a coma and he went through this huge thing. But when he said that during the time his NDE happened, there was no brain activity at all. He was completely like shut off that time.
Yeah, they have something called a Glasgow scale. That's how they measure like consciousness. Like waking consciousness would be like a 15, and he was on like the scale of a 3 or a 4. So he was completely unresponsive, grand mal seizures. It was like really, really bad. And
did you get measured, Nicole, on the Glasgow scale or anything?
I have no idea. No.
They might have, but it's not something they would generally tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Nicole had grand mal seizures.
What?
Grand mal seizures was certainly part of your.
I mean, when I woke up, I was having seizures like constantly and stuff like that, and it's still too like it was affected in my brain. That's why I had to have everything hooked up to my brain onto this, like it's an EEG scan. It's just monitoring your brain and seeing like where you're at and how your brain activity is and all that kind of thing, because it was still like it was a couple days, like almost 5, I would say, that I was finally coming back to and actually being able to like respond and like be there, and because I was still having these issues right after, because I could still pass away from how many seizures, my heart stopping, hence why I had the tube in my heart and like all that kind of stuff. And it took a while for me to actually come back and sit down and be able to talk. But it's like when I first came and woke up out of my coma, like I was happy and everything. But since I had all these medical problems with it, it led to, having issues during that time. And it was just, your brain needs to heal. You need to get all the medication they give you, all that kind of stuff. And it took a while.
Right.
And it's like, I don't really remember those issues, but it's also too, it's just like the main thing. It was like even too, when I woke up from my coma, like time wasn't really still a thing when I woke up, because I would, pass out or have a seizure or have problems with my heart or anything and just wake up again and just like be confused. And it took a while for my brain to finally actually accept, like, this is reality. This is where you are, and you have to accept it. Because it was just, it took a while, but
Yeah.
it's just, your brain needs to heal.
You have people who come back from near-death experiences, and even if it wasn't as like severe as cerebral meningitis or anything like that, um, they will, like, there's some people who express having to adjust to reality because after experiencing something that is so real compared to this reality, they're like, there's no, this is kind of like a joke compared to where I was. It's like
Mhm.
it's like a copy paste, and it's not even like a good copy paste job. Like it's nothing compared to that place. And one guy couldn't watch TV for a while. He's like, I couldn't even watch TV, watching people kill each other, do all this. It was just so fake, and he had trouble adjusting.
But there's a lot of people that say that sunsets don't look as good anymore. Like there's 2 months where they're kind of depressed after they come back from NDEs.
That's normal.
And
Yeah, they'll
sunsets
get
don't look
depressed.
as good anymore. I've heard that handful of
It
times.
seems like the reality is like not as real. It's kind of fake.
Yeah, and I didn't want to go out, like, out in public or anything when I got home after, because I was scared,
Yeah.
honestly.
Were you confused as to which reality was real?
Yeah, and like I said too, like every time I would like pass out after my coma and wake back up, like I would forget. And like it was just the whole thing, because like still like in my mind it was just like, how come the only thing I'm thinking about is just my grandpa, and then I'm passing out and waking back up and like having these issues of just like remembering like this is reality. And that's why like after too, when they sent me home, like I was like starting to accept it, but I still have that memory of like me going to my grandpa and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, it was confusing and it was weird. And just being able to go out into reality after was just, it gave me anxiety, and it gave me, it made me feel weird and just like, this is reality and that's not, like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it's different.
So we can talk about the after effects next. Like, what happened afterwards? Like, how did this affect you in terms of, because we know that it took a lot of time for you to heal and everything, but like, how has it affected your view, maybe spiritual view, or what it means to be alive? And
I mean, I count every day as a blessing. Um, I look at it as that I'm a miracle, and that, there's a reason here. So, like, keep telling my story. I mean, it has affected me as a person telling my story to people, because also too with like, me being disabled and stuff like that after, they look at me differently. But it's also too, it's like I just have to look at reality and just accept how it is and just keep pushing forward. And no matter what, just have that positivity, have, just keep going and doing what you can to be able to survive. And that's what I'm doing every day, is surviving, because I still have that chance to pass away, unfortunately. It sucks, but it is what it is.
And you have the, I know you have the seizures
yeah,
quite frequently, or
I mean, it depends. It really does depend. Since I'm a woman, when I get my periods, that's when it's the most for me. Sometimes I can go months without it. I've gone a year without it. And then sometimes it's just a couple days. Like, it really is random.
yeah,
But also too, like, I need to make sure that I am in like a good household. I'm eating like as much as I can and all that stuff. And it's just like, as a teacher too, it was kind of hard because I don't make that much. Like, I didn't make that much. So I had to give myself what I can. And, it sucks too, because it's like, I feel bad for, thinking for my boyfriend. He's very supportive,
yeah,
and he actually dated somebody that had epilepsy before me, so he gets it. He's seen me though and have my seizures, and he did say that mine are kind of worse than his ex's, because I can they can be controlled, but they also can't. And that's why I moved to Colorado, because I don't know if you heard of Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is the reason why they started a CBD, because it helps with seizures. Yep. So I get an aura. Like I said, in Wisconsin, I was on like 2 different medications. They wanted to do brain surgery and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted a second opinion before I did any surgery with my brain. So I left Wisconsin and I had to move out to Colorado, where when in Wisconsin, I was living a pretty good life. Like, I still had my license. I was able to drive to work. I didn't have to bother people. I didn't have to spend money on Ubers and cabs and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved out to Colorado, license taken away. Um, I was judged a lot more for having a disability and finding a job. Thank goodness for some schools that accepted me, but I can't work at 40 hours like I used to and stuff like that, because I wasn't able to feed myself as much more, because like I said, you don't make a lot for the career path that I have. And out here, it's a lot more expensive than Colorado. So it's just like, I have to save every penny I have. I have to, still try to live that lifestyle that I want to, and still try to be part of the normal society other than being homeless on the fucking streets. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
it's
excuse me
extremely
for my
hard.
language, but it's just like,
And
it's extremely hard to get on disability too. Like,
and I've not been through what you've been through, but I know it's extremely hard because you can't operate normally a lot of times.
yeah.
And when you're getting jobs, you mentioned that it was hard to get jobs. Thank goodness some places accepted you,
Hmm.
some schools.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that some places turned you down, or other jobs turned you down because you.
Or I had
Yeah.
a seizure at the job, and, you know, they came. I've had one at an interview because I was so scared and nervous.
Hmm.
Like, it's, and it's really random too, because it's like, I can't tell you when it's going to happen,
Right.
but it's also too, it's like, it really depends on, how much you can support yourself to be able to make sure that you're getting everything that you need, other than relying on other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say that clearly that number one, we brought up Evan Alexander. He had a miraculous recovery and he seems pretty okay now, but
Hmm.
he went through a similar path. Uh, Nicole also recovered from a situation that her doctor said she should have died, like 95%
Yeah.
chance should have died. And to come back at all is a miracle.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And to expect perfect operation is also ridiculous.
Hmm.
She has a lot of after effects from that, the meningitis, and thinking about somebody in a wheelchair or somebody that's disabled, when they have one thing wrong, it's so hard for every part of their life. It compounds. Nobody wants to give them jobs. She was 19, 20 when it happened, so she was coming out of high school and going to college, and people think she's weird, and whatnot, and because she has these different unusual things, and she's had a lot of trouble just trying to live life as a young woman after something so extreme that
Yeah.
nobody even listens to you. They won't even believe you when you tell them. And so she really needs to be considered, in the category of receiving medical help, because she's has after effects and is disabled from that situation. You need to take NDEs more seriously, but specifically the after effects of
Oh yeah.
of
Especially
what she
something
went
like
through.
this, and
Yeah, and also not treat you differently. And unfortunately, I am treated differently by my family. I'm treated differently from my friends. Like, certain friends, like, I have awesome friends, but also too, like, I've heard people like tell me things and be like, "Oh, she won't remember that." It's like, like, why would you
yeah.
say something like that? Like, that's just mean.
So memory is part of the after effects, just to be clear, of the
Yeah,
NDE. You have
because when I woke up,
explain that.
it was like 51st dates. Like, I kept waking up thinking I was with my grandpa. I kept waking up thinking I was with my grandpa. And, like, I was confused for a while about why I'm here and stuff like that. And it took a while for me to, like, finally come back. And it's like, in the beginning when I woke up, like, it's like the movie 51st Dates.
Right.
And I just kept thinking the same thing, like, over and over again. Like, and it took a while. My memory's gotten better. It's weird how my memory works. I wish I could explain it to you, but I can't. But it's also things that people get annoyed with, and they think I'm just like a broken record. And like, I know I talk about this, and I talk about this to people, and I get frustrated, but it helps me talk, and like I can just tell people just get kind of annoyed with it.
Add the memory into. I just implore people to try to imagine this situation. Add the memory into it on top of that. Constant seizures or often seizures, and you don't know when they'll happen. Not understanding which reality is real. Not having anybody believe you.
Yeah.
Being only 19 years old. Not really having your parents support because they don't actually fully believe what happened. And
I mean, they support me for a while, but it's like after, a couple of years, they're like, okay, like here you are. They saw me work and they saw me do all those things. They're like, go back to reality and do you, and you can get this, and you got this. And it's just like, for me, it's a lot different than being a healthy, normal person.
Because you're still going through it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I can't change that. I'm always going to have these problems. And that's why, too, like, I moved out here and I was talking to my neurologist, and she even looked at me. She was like, how the hell did you get bacterial meningitis? I'm like, I don't know. And she's looking at me. She's like, you still have your legs? I'm like, yeah. And she's just reading through all my medical records and stuff like that. And, like, the one thing I asked her, I'm like, is my brain ever going to heal? And she's like, no. She's like, it's not. I finally got Medicaid through disability. I got food stamps finally. It's just the thing of like, getting paid monthly, which takes a while, which is why I had to get a lawyer. It took a really hard time. And I had to get a lawyer for it. I had to go back to my parents to actually, my boyfriend had to yell at him on the phone because they wanted nothing to do with me, unfortunately. They're like, we hear this, we get it, she's going through it. It's just like, I get it. My parents complain about how expensive my medical bills were when I was in a coma. It is what it is, but here I am. I'm alive, so thank you. But it's also too, it's like they got, tired of hearing my problems and hearing my struggles and all that kind of stuff because they still expect me to be this normal person when I can't. And it's like a lot of people have that issue of not putting themselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
To actually understand how struggling it is, and also too how it sucks, but it's like I'm thankful for the people that have been around me and helped me because I would be on the streets. I would. Like, it sucks because disability is really, really hard to get to. And like that's why I had to go home to my mom and stuff like that, because she was even on the phone with them too, and just like I'm like, this is what I'm dealing with, and I can't work full time anymore. I've done this for many years. I've tried.
This country's a
But
joke.
it's not to the, and it's gotten
just
to
about
the
to
point,
mention.
it's gotten to the point where it's like I have done everything that I could for working. I have tried to live the normal life. I have tried to do it all because I wanted to consider myself a normal person too, but I can't.
Yeah, the system doesn't care.
And I'm thankful for Nathan. He's my boyfriend. I'm thankful for Kevin and all that kind of stuff, for people that have supported me and actually literally like not want to see me, homeless or on the streets or on that kind of stuff, because it's like, but it's also too, that's why I want to do something. And I always wanted to tell my story because I want to give back one day to the people that have helped me, because I feel like it's unfair. And it's also too, it's like, my family once hasn't come and visited me in Colorado. They don't visit me. My sisters really don't talk to me that much. Like, it's, unfortunately, not everybody is like that, but some people are. And when you're not as successful, and if you're not as, like normal and healthy, people will judge you and look at you differently and just be like, and unfortunately, that's in my life.
Right.
And it is what it is. And I'm thankful for the friends and family I have now. I'm thankful for, what my parents helped me through in the beginning and all that kind of stuff, and being able to do what they can. but it's also too, it's like, they complain about the medical bills, but also they're going on these vacations to Alaska to go fishing and like all this other stuff. And it's like, but yet you have a daughter out here that is struggling. But I have to look over that and just feel like it is what it is. And I just need to do what's right for me. And I need to support myself. But I'm still figuring out how I can do that and what I can do. I thought about making my own CBD strain, like,
No, yeah,
because
definitely. Like,
yeah,
you got
like
to do
I
what you
think,
got to do.
yeah, I like, and but unfortunately, everything costs
Well, luckily, a lot of people are waking up to spirituality,
money.
specifically NDEs. There's so many of them now on YouTube. As we're speaking, there's probably 10 more being posted. But it's just there's so many people that accept that now,
Yeah,
and it to me it's very clear your story is that you got this bacterial meningitis that nobody really knows where it came from.
yeah,
You had this profound experience that really people didn't really believe you about. You had the after effects that are also strong and affected your life a lot, and then you've been fighting the medical system to try to get some support. And the
yeah.
medical system is just like it does in America. It just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just like Christian just had this horrible experience with
Oh God.
like, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to mention that publicly, but
No, it's fine. Like, I'll mention it. I had, it's the second time it's happened to me, but it was years apart. I had kidney stones, and I don't know if you've ever had them, but I pray that you never, or Nathan, I hope he doesn't. I hope you never experience them. And I talked to a woman who used to work at my job, and she said in her experience, it's worse than childbirth. And the pain put me on the floor at work, and it was just excruciating. But just to go to the hospital, they have you in there for 3 hours, and I'm like, dude, help me, please. Like, I choose death over this pain. That's how bad it hurt. It was so powerful that it made me want to vomit. And they just to be like, oh yeah, you have kidney stones, and they scanned me, and they gave me some morphine and all that. It was like $2,000 for that, just for that,
Yeah.
and some pills. And I was like, are you serious? Like, this is insane. It makes me not want to go to the hospital. If something happens, unless
Yeah.
I'm bleeding on the floor, I don't want to go. Like, it's just this
Well,
country.
it's like you for now. For me, it's like honestly, if I pass away from having a seizure or something like that with my medical condition, let me pass away. Like I don't want to deal with that because it's a lot.
That's how bad it is here.
and other side is not so bad after death. It's not so bad,
No,
right?
No, a lot of people are
Not as
like,
bad as people thought.
yeah, a lot of people, and
I'm
like,
excited now. Like I'm
yeah,
just like here I am. Like I know I'm doing what I can. Let's see what I can do. But like when it happens, let's go.
yeah,
Like
that's how a lot of people feel, and they actually end up losing their fear of death. And
mhm.
they'll be like, I'm not afraid of where I'm going because it's not this, and it's not full of the BS.
So I just wanted to, I implore the people in charge of deciding who needs disability to take this seriously, and anybody that's been through an NDE to make that, an acceptable criteria, all the things that Nicole is going through. So, whatever that process is, it needs to be incorporate, this experience. It hurts my heart to see that the medical system is turning their back on her. And I think it's probably because, they don't believe in NDEs yet, and then it has to do with a few other things.
That's the other thing too, is like people like are starting to like glorify NDEs and stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of the people coming forward to share their stories. It wasn't just, okay, this is great now. Like after the NDE, they have to process everything over the years. So it's an emotional roller coaster sometimes, depending on the person's experiences. But yeah, it's a big deal. But is there anything else you'd like to share?
For me, it's just like, you know, I just want to let people know that, like, thank you for listening and thank you for your time. Life is beautiful, but never be scared for the afterlife. It is extremely beautiful. And basically, too, like, you know, I am extremely proud and I'm extremely thankful that I am here today and able to share my story and have others actually understand. And maybe also to people that, look at someone like me differently and be able to understand the struggles and be able to understand what I had to go through. And also like our government and our hospitals and all that kind of stuff, to be able to understand that there are people like me out here and there are people like me that are struggling, but put a positive and try to put a positive attitude every day to be able to make it and survive. And it's just the fact that I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful for you listening. And I'm thankful to share my story about death because it's different and it's interesting. And it's like every single day I look at it and just be like, wow, like I'm still here and I have a purpose. I'm still figuring out because, if I was supposed to die, I would have died. And if I was supposed to die all these times, I would have died. But I am still here for a purpose and I am still, I'm fighting and I'm going to figure it out. And I just, every day I love that I am a teacher, I'm a guider, I'm, be the best friend I can possibly be to people because it's like a lot of people don't have that love and a lot of people don't have the energy and positivity that comes from me because it's like a lot of people need that. And here I am and I just want to give it out because, I care. I care about other people and that's what I've always done. I've cared for others and that's who I am.
That's awesome. Thank you. And it was a pleasure having
Well
you.
said.
Thank you. It was talking with you guys.